Thank you for joining us for this pre-council webinar. I'll now hand over to Tom Terry, President of the IAA, who will now present.
Thanks, Christian. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. The intent right now is for us to sort of talk through what we can expect to be discussing in Chicago at our council meeting. But let me first say, express my gratitude for everyone joining and listening in today. We will have an opportunity for you to type in questions or comments as we go, but we'll see how this goes. We're not going to do a roll call of participants. This is not an official council meeting. It's really an opportunity to share with you a little bit of insight into some of the topics that we hope to get into in greater detail in Chicago. And we hope to set aside a few minutes at the end for your questions or comments, and so you can use that facility for that. Well, those were my welcome remarks, pretty much. And by the way, also, I'm going to invite Mathieu Langelier to join in the conversation as we go through the presentation this morning. And I may invite him to make some comments on some things that I've missed and so forth. We've worked together to pull together the agenda and much of the materials for this morning's webcast. What I want to do is looking at number 2, I do want to provide an overview of what we can expect at the Chicago IAA meetings coming up in really just 3 weeks or so. Then I want to move to the council agenda, that's number 3, and walk through very quickly the agenda to acquaint you with what's there. Number 4, what we really hope to do is to provide some detailed background on 4 of the council agenda items, which are identified here, and we'll get into each of those. And then number 5, we'll go to questions and comments. So let's provide an overview of the meeting and maybe what's a little bit different. And if this comes across as an advertising plug, well, that's because it is. And I really want to encourage anyone who is in Chicago on Tuesday to attend one or the other of a couple of seminars that I think are going to be excellent. One is on the International Insights on Mortality, Population, and the Public Interest. This has been pulled together and will be presented jointly by the Mortality Working Group and the Population Issues Working Group. Secondly, there's a banking seminar, as you'll see here, the Actuary in Banking, hosted by the Actuarial Society of South Africa, for which we're very grateful that they could attach that seminar to our IAA meetings. Now, the start of our normal 4-day cycle is Wednesday, October 4th. And the very opening morning, we've got 3 special sessions that I just want to highlight very quickly. The first is a breakfast panel on women leaders in the actuarial profession. And we're grateful to the Society of Actuaries for partnering with us in putting this session on. It promises to be a very stimulating and interesting session, and we hope as many of you who can come can attend that opening breakfast panel. We'll have our normal IAA welcome session following that breakfast panel, and then we'll go into a new item that we have for the first morning, which we're calling the concurrent roundtables. And here they are. You've seen these on the advance agenda for the Chicago meetings, but I'll just say a few words about each of these. The first is focused on full member associations and their public policy work. Across all of our 70 members many of our members participate in public policy issues in their home jurisdictions. And this is an opportunity to share, discuss, hear what others are doing, successes, failures, challenges, and opportunities. And so we hope it will be a robust conversation of something that, of course, the IAA is getting into more and more over time. But it's something that our members, all of you, have been doing for quite some time. And some of you are new to the public policy world, and this is an opportunity for us to have a roundtable discussion and share what we've learned in this important area for the profession. The second topic is diversity in the profession. The topic speaks for itself. Many of our members have been working and focused on this topic, and we hope to, similar to the first topic, share what we're learning, successes, challenges, and so forth. Quite frankly, the third topic, actuarial research, falls into the same category. Some of our members are very advanced in their research efforts and have been engaged in actuarial research for many years. Others of our members, we're hearing, want to be involved more in actuarial research and have a lot of questions. What works, what doesn't work? What's the source of funding for research? How or should we partner with academia? How or should we partner with industry? What are the ways in which research is conducted and what sorts of topics are conducted? So I really would encourage you to sign up in advance for one of those three roundtables that will happen on Wednesday morning. Okay, let's now go to the council agenda. I've got 3 quick slides here that I'm going to move through pretty quickly. I will just mention that our consent agenda is our normal consent agenda for the meeting in October, November, and that includes ratification of executive committee appointments and reappointments with respect to leadership roles for IAA committees, working groups, and the IAA delegates to sections. We'll also acknowledge the results of the electronic ballots that took place recently in the last couple of months, and we will acknowledge the admission of the Society of Actuaries of Kazakhstan and the Actuarial Society of Ghana as full members, and so we'll have the opportunity to congratulate them. Our statutory committee reports, as usual, you'll hear from me as president on our activities in the officer group as well as the executive committee. And quite frankly, we have a lot to report on there, and so I'm looking forward to being able to share with all of you some of the initiatives that are ongoing, but some that are emerging that I think are pretty exciting and important to all of us. So that will be a robust report to all of you. We will have our nominations committee report in, and we will have an opportunity to approve appointments and reappointments to the statutory and limited membership committees. And finally, we'll have a finance and administration report. We will seek approval of our auditors for 2017. We will seek approval of a 2018 budget and member fees. We'll seek approval of an updated investment policy, and we will hear a report from the Secretariat on what we've been waiting for, which is the IT project. We've talked about this before, and it's an important and very significant upgrade to our IT infrastructure. So we'll hear a report on that. Now, when we come to the business agenda, here are the items that we have listed. The education syllabus, I'll say a little bit more about that in just a second. Member fees for 2019 and beyond. I'll also say a little bit more about that in just a second. We'll hear from the Accreditation Committee, the Branding and Communications Subcommittee, the Professionalism Committee, the Actuarial Standards Committee, and of course we will vote on the change of officers. Now the 30-day agenda includes background reading on all of these materials, and I would encourage you all to go and prepare yourself by reading these materials in advance, if you could. I just wanted to, in the interest of time, identify these topics, but I'm not going to go into any of these. I'm not going to go into all of these in depth this morning. However, there are 4 topics that are on the council agenda that I do want to talk a little bit more about. The first is member fees for 2019 and beyond. The second is our proposed 2018 budget and the related member fees for 2018, which we're calling a transition year for member fees, and I'll explain why in just a minute. Thirdly, I want to refresh our memories on one of the most important items on our agenda, which is the approval of the IAA education syllabus. And then finally, I'll say a word about the investment policy changes. So I'll take each of these one at a time, starting with the first one, which is the member fees for 2019 and beyond. First off, a little bit of background. Our current practice is this. Our internal regulations state that full members and associate members shall pay such membership fees as determined by the council. Those are exactly the words in our internal regulations. And each year, as the next year's budget is presented for approval, embedded in that budget is a membership fee recommendation. Number 2, it has been a long-standing tradition that IAA membership fees for full members have been established by council each year as an annual rate times the number of fully qualified actuaries, their FQA count. It goes by several names, but oftentimes an association will think, well, what's our count of FQAs? Because that is the basis for dues or member fees. And so an example is that this past year, our full members have paid member fees of $18.75 Canadian times the number of FQAs, their FQA count. Now, what's the issue? Well, the issue is this. Full member associations define FQAs for themselves. This is not a definition that is imposed on our members by the IAA. It's up to each and every FMA to define their own FQA and come up with their own count. Over the years, it's emerged that inconsistencies have happened in the FQA count from one FMA to another, and I'll explain that more on this next slide. Here's where the inconsistencies have come from. We've seen that some individual actuaries may be considered an FQA by one FMA, but not by another FMA. We've seen the emergence of numerous different qualifications, classifications, and designations for actuaries, which have added to some of the disparate recognition of what is an FQA. This evolution has contributed to FMAs creating new membership categories and revising their own FQA definitions, all contributing to greater inconsistencies amongst the FMAs. Now, mind you, I'm not saying that there's a right or a wrong. I'm not saying that a member is correct or incorrect in how they count FQAs. I'm merely saying that there are inconsistencies. And what we're concluding is that we need to define a new common base for determining FMA member fees. And that new base should be fair for all. We're hoping in the long run, starting in 2019, to eliminate the inconsistencies. So where we're headed is this. We're imagining, and the officers and the executive committee have been examining this, and first bullet here, we believe that a new basis on which IAA member fees should be calculated should be broad and inclusive and not limited to a term like FQA that can be defined differently from one member to another. Secondly, we think that a new basis for IAA fees should reflect the principles of fairness, clarity, and simplicity. We think the new basis should be fair, it should be clear, and it should be simple. So we propose that the new basis should encompass all individuals who have earned an actuarial credential or qualification, whether that credential or qualification is fellow, associate, CERA, qualified, certified, or some other credential or local terminology. But we want to be broad and inclusive. Finally, we propose that the new basis be discussed between now and Berlin and approved in Berlin for use beginning in 2019. We don't propose that we have answers just yet. We do propose that generally the basis should be broad and it should include the types of people mentioned there in the second bullet. Now, this again is something for 2019 and beyond, and we want to give ample time for there to be discussion and input. We know that there are varying practices of designations and how people describe their types of members and so forth, and we want to make sure that there's ample time for discussion and input into this before we develop a proposal that we would hope to seek approval of in Berlin, so that member associations would have ample time to adjust prior to 2019. Now, we do have an issue for 2018. And let's flip to the next slide. And let me just lay out what we want to do for 2018. First of all, we understand that some members are intending to change their FQA definition for 2018, and we estimate that these changes could result in a substantial budget variance for 2018. Hence, we think we need a temporary transition measure for this next year, for 2018, in order to address the budget issue in a way that's fair for all FMAs. So our budget proposal actually anticipates that all FMAs will pay for 50% of their associates for 2018. Now let me pause here for a second, and if you see the depiction, the blue boxes on the right, I can use 2017 as an example. Some of our full member associations today in 2017 pay dues on 100% of their associate members. Some FMAs, some full member associations, pay dues or member fees on 0% of their associates. What we're proposing is that we level the playing field, and that for 2018, which we'll call a transition year between 2017 and a more permanent arrangement starting in 2019, we're proposing that for 2018 that members pay member fees on the basis of 50%, which is quite obviously a compromise between 100% and 0%, but it is our thought that this basis is fair for all. Now, this next slide that's up in front of you includes the wording that is in the budget proposal. If you look at the budget proposal in the 30-day agenda, there is a page of the budget itself with a lot of numbers on it. You'll also find a series of notes following that page, and the very first note is worded exactly as is shown here, and I'll read it, and but I won't attempt to somehow talk about it at length. It says what it says. This budget assumes no increase in the full member association fee rate. In other words, the $18.75. We expect to keep the $18.75. And no increase in revenue from other categories of memberships, associate members and things like that. We're not talking about changing the associate member fees. The budget does reflect an average 2% increase in the overall number of fee-paying actuaries, and the budget also anticipates that full member associations with other categories of fee-paying actuarial members not already included in their IAA membership fee calculations, such as associates and CERAs, will pay IAA membership fees for 50% of those additional members in 2018. Now, this is a very tightly worded budget proposal, and one of the reasons we wanted to have this webinar today is to just say a little bit more about that. We know that there will be questions and what does this mean for me and so forth, and for that reason we want to take the time now and encourage conversation with the Secretariat following this webcast for clarification purposes. So in summary, our intention for 2018 is to have a fair, clear, and simple transition for all full member associations. The term fee-paying actuarial members, which is used in the budget proposal, it's used as a transition measure, and it targets professional actuarial members who have been awarded an actuarial credential or qualification, but who are not considered as FQAs by FMAs. So we want to take that into account. Thirdly, this description is not intended to include pre-credential or pre-qualification actuarial students. It's not intended to include actuarial analysts, and it's not intended to include paraprofessionals. All of these are not deemed to be actuaries, and so we don't intend to rope non-actuaries into this basis for 2018. Now, the 2018 budget does project, I want to talk about the budget as a whole now, it does project a small deficit of roughly 47,000 Canadian dollars. I will say that the small deficit that we're projecting, which is a little bit unusual, it's been a while since we projected a deficit of this size. We think we can handle it, but it's not attributable to change in membership fees, which quite frankly, we're projecting a slight bump in membership revenue fees, even with the changes that we've described, a very slight bump of about 2%, which is very consistent with the overall count of actuaries that we expect to see in 2018 amongst our members. Really, if I were to respond to a question, well, where is that budget deficit coming from? It's probably best to say that it's attributable to the exceptional expenses related to the IT project. We'll talk more about that, and we will report on the IT project and its impact on our budget over what years and so forth when we get to Chicago, so I won't go further into that today. In Chicago then, just to sort of summarize and look at our next steps, we will seek approval for the 2018 budget, and that includes this transitional member fee expectation. And secondly, we will start a discussion about member fees for 2019 and beyond. We'll actually circulate a paper prior to Chicago, and it's nearly ready now, and we will probably circulate that paper in the next week or so. No promises, but that would be my expectation. We want to circulate a very brief discussion paper prior to Chicago so that you all can come to our council meeting with thoughts and ideas that are triggered by the discussion paper that'll go into greater depth than that which I've gone into today. Let's go to, actually, on your slide you see syllabus. I'm going to say one more word about the 2018 member fees, however. One of the things that we're aware of is that terms like associate members, fellow members, those kinds of terms apply easily and they translate easily for some of our member associations. For other member associations, the translation is more challenging, and it doesn't. The translation may not happen exactly. We're expecting that we'll hear from many of you, and we want to hear from many of you over the next 2 or 3 weeks with your data, with your specifics. Show us what you have. We can help sort out what it is we think this 2018 fee proposal would mean to you. Quite frankly, the IAA has never officially gathered this sort of member information before. It's brand new. We've never done this before. We have always relied on members themselves to calculate the basis upon which dues are paid. And we've been reliant on a definition that is a self-defining term by each member. It's been up to each member to define what an FQA is. So not surprisingly, we will probably encounter a number of you with questions trying to interpret what we mean. And I would just say, for purposes of this webcast, this webinar, we'll hold all those kinds of individual association questions, if you don't mind, and please direct them to us so that we have a chance to respond specifically to each of you. Our hope and expectation is that we come up with as fair a means of gathering member fees for 2018 as possible. Well, that applies to 2019 and beyond also. But even though we've got differing situations from association to association, we very much want to be able to be as fair as we can be for purposes of leveling the playing field and gathering membership fees for 2018. Now I'll say something about the syllabus. Just as a reminder, and I do want to remind everybody that a lot of people, a lot of associations have put in an incredible amount of work on the IAA syllabus efforts. And I've expressed appreciation to all of you in the past. I would do so right now again, and I would do so again when we get to Chicago. There's been an enormous amount of interest and energy associated with this very important topic, and huge gratitude for all of you who've weighed in and have helped us get to the spot we're at today. As you know, in Budapest, there was a call for let's see the details. When we said we don't want to change anything about IAA governance related to the syllabus, we meant that, but many of you wanted to see what the changes actually would look like. And so immediately after Budapest, we set about refining and editing and redlining various of our governance documents. And we've discussed and gotten feedback with so many of you. And within about a month or so after our Budapest meetings, we settled on what we believe is the right way forward with all the syllabus content surrounded by the appropriate documentation and governance document changes. And we decided, after talking with many of you, that rather than take the syllabus approval to an electronic vote, that a topic of this importance we would bring to Chicago and approve in Chicago. And so that's exactly what we intend to do. Thank you so much for all your input. So many of you put a lot of very good effort into this, and I'm looking forward to approving the syllabus in Chicago at our council meeting. Lastly, of the 4 topics I wanted to mention, and I know that some of our section members in particular, section leadership, have been very curious and interested in our investment policies. We have in this 30-day agenda a detailed description of our policy that highlights the changes, and I don't want to go into that today, but I do want to bring your attention to it and draw your attention to it and encourage you to take a look if this is something that's of particular interest to you. We will briefly summarize the presentation in Chicago, but I have to warn you, it will be a brief summary presentation. It will not be an exhaustive presentation. So I put this on our topic today to ask you all, if you have an interest in going into this, please read the materials attached to the 30-day agenda. We will seek some council approval of the changes. And I think for many of you, you'll find that the changes are minimal. There's no dramatic change. It's really a matter of kind of adjusting and conforming some of our investment parameters and enabling greater flexibility around cash management and basically making the policy a little bit more workable. The Audit and Finance Committee has worked hard on this for the last 9 months, and so gratitude to them. But please take the opportunity to read this before you come to Chicago. At this point in time, we've taken about 30 minutes. We hope to leave about 5 or 10 minutes for questions or comments. I will now ask those of you that wish to include any questions or comments. There's a question that came in about whether member fees would be paid in 2018 on individuals holding a certified actuarial analyst designation from the CAA Global organization. It would be our understanding right now that these individuals are not actuaries, and therefore they would not be counted in the basis for calculating dues. And by the way, this is exactly the sort of question that we're really going to want to encourage people to ask. We don't want there to be mysteries or confusion. So I want to thank you for raising that particular question. That's a good one. There's probably many others like that we can expect that you'll comment on over the next couple of weeks before we get to Chicago, if there's questions about the 2018 fee proposal.
And Tom, in the meantime, because I know some people are probably typing, I just want to highlight to everybody that like Tom and I are sitting right beside together at the IAA head office in the Secretariat, and we're very happy to have the President doing this webinar live from the office. It doesn't happen often, but I wanted to highlight that to our members who are there. And we're also trying to figure out the best time of the day for us to hold such sessions. So we have tweaked the timing this time versus the last. So this is 10 a.m. here, Ottawa time. We are doing one again in 12 hours to try to reach everybody around the globe. I see some of the attendees right now, a few of them from Japan, and I know it's quite late there. This time it's probably 11:30 now, so thank you very much for going to bed late for us. And if you have any comments about the timing of the future webinars, once we meet each other in Chicago, just let me know or send us a note to myself or Tom. We're happy to get your feedback. The goal here is to reach as many of our members as possible, and that's why we do it twice during the day, to try to reach as many of the times as possible. So thank you for attending.
We've got a question about, well, I'll ask the question and see if I can understand it. Will the voting allocations be based on dues paying members as well, or still only on FQAs? That's a very good question. We have not anticipated any changes whatsoever with respect to the governance. And so nothing changes with respect to governance. Nothing changes with respect to voting allocations. FQAs, until we make another change in the statutes, will still be the basis upon which voting allocations are made. Nevertheless, it's still a very good question, and it's one that we need to make sure we attend to as we look at 2019 and beyond. And so I'm grateful for that question being raised. Now there's another question about investments. Why Canadian, not global equities? I'm not going to respond to that question, but we will record that and we will package it up for the experts, and we'll make sure we bring that question back to Chicago. Thanks for asking it, but I'm not going to attempt to answer that question. I'll just pause here for just another minute to see if any other general questions come in. I'm imagining many of you have specific questions, and I'm hoping and expecting that we'll hear from you separately about specific circumstances for your own association as it may relate to the budget and the 2018 transition on member fees. And by the way, I'm going to mention one other thing as well. I'm looking forward to our presidential report and our executive committee report in Chicago, where we will tend to and bring you up to speed on various forward-looking strategic issues that that I know are of interest to so many of you. We've attempted to take certain tactical issues and address them directly during this webinar, so that you would have the opportunity to kind of get an advanced look on those on some of these technical issues. But believe me, there's ample other sorts of topics that we're looking forward to diving into and sharing with you once we get to Chicago. Well, a question came in about some examples of the different definitions of FQAs. You know, I'm going to take a pass on that. I'm going to tell you from the IAA perspective what I think we've seen, but I don't know how a member defines an FQA. You'd have to ask each member how they define the FQA. It is a topic, it is a definition that is created at the member level. So you'd almost have to ask each member. From the IAA's perspective, we have noticed and observed, and I think this was included in one of the slides, that an associate member of an organization might well be included in an FQA definition for one association, but not for another. That's probably the best example I can come up with, which is why, in fact, that we believe that leveling the playing field and creating a fair outcome, as fair as we can come up with for 2018, would be to split the difference and suggest that associates be counted at the rate of 50%. But I think you'd have to go to each member to ask them how they specifically would define an FQA. Well, listen, I think we're probably about to wrap it up. I will just say a couple of things. One, I hope you're all planning on coming to Chicago. I have a particular fondness for the city. It happens to be my home city. We're so grateful to the Society of Actuaries and the other U.S.-based associations who are our hosts in Chicago. I know that they're planning some terrific, you know, gala evening activities, and we can all look forward to a terrific time in Chicago. We have a lot of hard work to do, as we all know. I mean, the committees are working away, preparing their agendas for the face-to-face meetings, which, as you know, happen every 6 months. And we at Council, and those of you who are Council representatives, we have our homework to do, and I would encourage you to do that homework. Understand as well that there's 250 or 300 other volunteers who are also doing their homework and getting prepared for the face-to-face meetings in Chicago. So this is a busy time for so many of us, and I myself want to just express my own gratitude to all of you and to all the people that participate in the various committees at the IAA. It's gratifying to see so much effort go into the important work that we all do. So with that, I'm going to call it quits. I will say thank you, and for those of you that are were particularly stimulated by these topics and want to hear it again live 12 hours from now, or I guess 11 and a half hours from now, you're welcome to join the second version of this webinar, which will happen at roughly 11 and a half hours from now. Of course, I'm teasing, and I so appreciate everybody for joining today. So again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thank you for participating.